Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Wednesday to Self-Care Wednesday. It's hump day. Hump day, hump day, hump day. Anyways, yeah. Okay. Brain. Good morning. Okay, we are on day number 3, part 3 of people pleasing. Are you a people pleaser? I know I'm a recovering people pleaser every day. Every day it takes strength to not, just give in and go, yeah, okay, just do all the things, right? So on Monday, we talked about the characteristics of a people pleaser. Yesterday, we covered the causes and effects of people pleasing, and I'm going to run over those really quick before we get to, dun, 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 because it is Self-Care Wednesday, tips to stop people pleasing. So, it takes baby steps, and they even talk about it in there. So, as per usual, as I've done for the rest of this time, I am going to read it right off of the computer because, I'm trying to learn how to not do things the hard way. Okay, so, we're also going to talk about the niceness versus people or people pleasing. So, and it's like I said, I don't think that, a lot of people would cover this part or say what I'm about to say. I don't know. I feel like there's like a blurry line there, but I did come up with something that, you have to decide if, with the niceness versus people pleasing, is it coming from a place of altruism, or is it coming from a place of, feeling like you have to do it, because you don't want to let anyone down? What are the feelings? Is it just like, yes, I am pouring from an empty cup today, I'm going to do all the things? Or is it like, well, I said no last time and they may think I'm blah, 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 so I don't want to say no this time, and so I'm going to push myself. Sometimes pushing yourself is a good thing. But if it's a consistent thing, like if you're trying to get yourself out of your comfort zone and you're trying to learn something new, that's one thing. But when you're doing things just so people will like you, just so people will, see you, and you're hustling for your worthiness, that's where there's that fine line that you just don't want to cross. And that's people pleasing. So, again, been there, done that, still kind of do it. So yesterday the causes were poor self-esteem, insecurity, perfectionism, which I also added and did not add in my notes, control, because we try to control everything, right? So that, we try to get ahead of something that hasn't even happened yet so we can nip it in the bud, beat it to the punch. And if it's meant to happen, it's going to roll out anyway. So you're basically shooting yourself in the foot, not the greatest term to use nowadays, but you're putting obstacles in front of you that don't need to be there. Because, chances are it may not happen anyway. So, give yourself a break. Take a deep breath and say, you know what? Go with the flow. Past experiences, which could involve trauma, difficult experiences, abuse to avoid triggering behaviors. So, my notes for yesterday was helping is a form of altruism, which, they talked about in the niceness versus people. And like I said, you need to discern whether you're saying yes out of it for an altruistic reason, or if you're saying yes because you're in people pleasing mode. So some of the effects from the causes of people pleasing: anger and frustration, anxiety and stress, depleted willpower, lack of authenticity, weaker relationships. So you always want to be yourself. Just be yourself. If you are struggling, especially if you have a dinged up mental health, there may be a couple times in a row where you're just like, I cannot. But there also might be those times where you're like, you know what, I really need to decide if this is something I want to do or something I don't want, because sometimes we have to push ourselves to get us out of our comfort zones. Otherwise, we could spiral. So there are a lot of blurred and fine lines that go with this. But if you're going to make it black and white, altruism versus people pleasing. Am I doing this because, I'm feeling good about stuff today, and yeah, I want to do this, and yeah, I would love to say yes to you? Or are you doing it simply to please somebody else because you don't want to upset them? So those were that. Now, we are at tips to stop people pleasing. Tips to stop people pleasing. You know, I can feel myself coming back. I am literally a goofy person. I mean, seriously, goofball nature, straight out. Um, I learned a long time ago, and I fall by the wayside on occasion with this, that life is too short to be so serious all the time. Boy, I grew up serious. My dad sat me down. I've told this story before. My dad sat me down when I was 17, and he told me that I was just, he's like, I was the oldest 17-year-old he ever met. Like, you know, he's like, sometimes it's like sitting with an 80-year-old woman. And he wasn't trying to make me feel bad. He was trying to show me, Shelly Marie, there's a whole life out there. Enjoy it. Do your best to enjoy it. Do your best to get out there and do these things. And then, you know, stuff happens, and but I've always kept the demeanor as much as I could. So I can feel myself starting to come back. I can feel this authentic side, and I can feel myself not stifling it anymore, because, you know, I don't want people to make fun of me, or I don't want people to, you know, think I'm weird. It's like, at this point in my life, and even in the last 5 years, I just don't give a shit. I am who I am. You like me, you don't. You know, it's all up to you. But, let's get rolling to it. Tips to stop people pleasing. So again, this is from verywellmind.com. I am going to put this in the comments, the link to the article. If you've been following since Monday, Tuesday, and today, I just want you to read this, because reading it all the way through, making your notes, you know, seeing what fits, what doesn't fit, you may not be a people pleaser at all. You just may be someone who is burning the candle at both ends and just needs a break, which still, take your time, take your self-care. And it is Self-Care Wednesday, so, you know, Self-Care Wednesday is positioned perfectly in the middle of a work week. And that's why I put it there for my particular show, because I think it's good for us to remind ourselves that, hey, yeah, you're already 2 days in. You just take a couple deep breaths, give yourself some self-care today, and, you know, ride it on into the weekend. So the first one, so I'm going to read this right here, what they said. Fortunately, there are some steps that you can take to stop being a people pleaser and learn how to balance your desire to make others happy without sacrificing your own happiness. So establish boundaries. I know for some people, boundaries can be hard, because we think boundaries, in regular thinking, boundaries to us are these huge walls, right? Like, stay out. And there's so much more than that. We're talking about emotional boundaries. You know, what are you willing to put up with? What are you not willing to put up with? Are you willing to put up with toxic people to see them through stuff? Are you not willing to put up with toxic people who refuse to change behavior? And we're not out here to fix people. We cannot fix anyone. The only people we can fix are ourselves. But we can help guide people. And sometimes people have that toxic behavior. It could be caused by trauma. It could be caused by a lot of different things. And so, you know, I'm sure that, you know, I can honestly say that I would say at least once in our lives, we've all gone through that toxic behavior. I've talked about how in the past I was a hurt people that hurt people. Okay. So hurt people. I was one of those. Not physically, but just verbally, because I had so much pain just locked inside of me. And, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't talk about mental health. And so it was just all this chaos running around. It was like, you know, warrior squirrels just on steroids, just, you know, like Xena the warrior squirrel. And just, there was a lot of crap going on in there. So, once, you know, somebody chose, you know, I talk about older sibling a lot when it comes to this, but she chose to stick by my side and say, hey, you know what? There is a light at the end of this tunnel, but you have to be able to grasp it yourself. I can lead you, I can guide you, but I cannot make you do this. You know, if you're willing to follow me, I will show you the way. And it took a while. It took a lot of teeth pulling, but she never quit. And so when you feel something in somebody, when you see something inside of somebody, there are times when you just can't walk away. But it requires a changed behavior on their part. It requires them to do some work on their healing. You know, I mean, don't go into a relationship thinking, any kind of relationship, whether it's a friendship, a family relationship, siblings, parents, whatever, thinking, oh, well, I'm going to change this person and bend them to my will. No, that's not what I'm talking about. When I say changed behaviors, I mean, we can keep going down the path we're going on and be that toxic person that people want to people please for, or we can be that person that learns. I wrote a quote down this morning that just popped into my head, and it's, it just said, may I embody the strength and wisdom to teach and learn at the same time. Every moment is a teachable moment. Even if we're teaching something, like I'm teaching this, I found some great, articles online, and all I could think of was, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much more about myself. Yesterday, one of my people-pleasing issues was perfectionism. And to that, I added the word control. Because I was always trying to control the situation because I was afraid of triggering abusive behavior. I was afraid of triggering, these memories that I had that would cause me to become, like verbally mean, just, verbally abusive. And I didn't want to be that person. I'm not that person. That was that little, Mr. Hyde inside of me that needed to heal. That angry, feral inner child that needed to heal and couldn't figure out how. And this is where establishing boundaries comes in. You have to know what you are willing to put up with. So this is what they wrote about it. It's important to know your limits, establish clear boundaries, and then communicate those limits. Be clear and specific about what you're willing to take on. If it seems like someone is asking for too much, let them know that it's over the bounds of what you are willing to do and that you won't be able to help. So, let's see. There are also other ways to create boundaries in your life to help rein in your people-pleasing tendencies. For example, you might only take phone calls at certain times to set limits on when you're able to talk. So, at 10 o'clock, my phone goes into Do Not Disturb. There are 3 numbers that I keep in my favorites that can get through, and mostly those are for emergency purposes, if somebody needs me or whatever. I do have my phone to the point where it's like, if you call me twice in a row, it will ring through Do Not Disturb, because, sometimes people do have an emergency, but I stop at a certain time. And, there are people who are up late. There are people who just kind of do their thing in the middle of the night. And that's okay if you're willing to, accept that. But we have to remember that just because we're up at 11 o'clock doesn't mean that everybody else is up at 11 o'clock. Just because we're rolling around tooling around the world at midnight doesn't mean everybody else is around at midnight. So, if you want to call somebody, maybe you need to talk to someone, text them first. If they don't answer, they're probably asleep. Don't wake people up from a dead sleep, because, this is how they end up setting their boundaries. Putting their phones on Do Not Disturb and go like, no, I just want this across the board because I don't want to deal with it. So we have to learn how to set healthy boundaries. And there are some things I've noticed that we do when we create new relationships. And again, I want to really kind of, make this very clear when I say relationships. I'm not just talking about significant other relationships. I'm talking about relationships across the board, okay? Coworkers, friends, family, all that stuff, because people do make new family all the time, especially with all this DNA stuff happening, right? But, and definitely in relationships, significant other relationships. When you are starting out in something new, you want to set certain boundaries. You don't want to just automatically put up your walls, okay? Because then you may not get anywhere in this, friendship or relationship. So, but you want to put up the healthy boundaries. You want to let people know, hey, I'm not going to put up with this behavior. Now, that doesn't mean you have to sit there and say, oh, well, you know what? I don't like that you just did that to me. You could just say, you know what? Just have an adult conversation. Go, wow, you know what? Really? Is that how you feel? Or something that's not going to just put them on the defensive. I'm going to bring up again something that I talked about the other day about a friendship I have, and it started out rather toxic. This person has a lot going on in their life, and it started out as a work friendship. And it has just grown since I'm no longer in that job. It has just become a friendship. But this is a person who had so much going on, didn't know how to deal with it, and was a hurt person hurting people. And I was the people they would hurt. When they would get in trouble at work, I took the brunt of it. When they were having problems at home, I took the brunt of it. And I didn't know how to say anything because I didn't want to make them mad. You know, I didn't want them to be mad at me. That was the important thing, right? It wasn't about my well-being. It was making sure they still liked me. Because it's like, you know, you don't always have those people you click with, or the people that you can hang out with outside and inside of work. You know, so it became this thing where it's like I started to learn that I had to start setting boundaries. You know, because I said something one time and they flipped the tables on me. And they're like, well, no, that's you. And it's like, absolutely not. And the only reason I did that was because older sibling pointed out to me that I needed to set boundaries. Otherwise, it would still be this today. And it got to the point where they were picking on me so much that, you know, I just started kind of, you know, not giving it back, but just saying, you know what, could you please not talk to me like that? If you need to talk and you need to vent, I am here. But, you know, don't just start throwing punches or calling me names because you need to vent and you're going to take it out on me. And after I left this job, or after I got laid off, basically, you know, they called me about a month later, and because we had been texting and finally had time to catch up, and it's like, well, I guess we can be friends again now. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I never thought we weren't friends. And they're all, well, you were doing this and you were doing that and you were doing this. And I'm like, no, those were your behaviors. I was simply defending myself because you were calling me names. You would come to my desk and just not even hello, not even are you busy, not you see me in the middle of working, and just start venting everything out to me. And when I told you that I had to work, fine, if you don't want to talk to me, I'll just deal with it myself. And they didn't realize they had been doing this. And I had to be clear. I had to communicate clearly. Because at this point I realized I can people please my way through this relationship and consistently be taken advantage of. Or I can set the healthy boundaries and make them understand that when I say no, I can't do something, it's not an affront to them. It's simply because I don't have the time, or I'm just not feeling up to it. Or you're establishing that boundary. And I was absolutely clear. By the end of that conversation, we had a new boundary. And we also had a new understanding that if something is bothering them, call me and we'll talk. Do not beat me down to make yourself feel better, because that's not going to help anybody. All right. So that's an example of setting boundaries. And like I said, at the very beginning, you have to speak clearly. Do not lose your authentic self. This was what one of the effects were from yesterday's thing, lack of authenticity. We do not have to, accept people's toxic behavior. We can tell them nicely and gently, hey, I'm here for you, but not if you're going to treat me like this. And, every so often the toxic person in us slips out, right? And we know it's there. We all have that dark side of us that's just, it's going to have a day and it's going to have a bad day. We're human, we're perfectly imperfect. And to me, that's the best way to be. We're humans. We're doing the best we can every day, and not every day is going to be a great day. So, just try to watch yourself as well. If you have to, walk away, take a deep breath, before it becomes a toxic situation, move forward. All right. So learn how to establish those boundaries. Start small. It can be hard to make a sudden change, so it is often easier to begin by asserting yourself in small ways. Changing behavioral patterns can be difficult. In many cases, you not only have to retrain yourself, but you also have to work on teaching the people around you to understand your limits. So for anybody that's new, that's watching this, I am one of these people that learns while I'm trying to give teachable moments. Even if it's a lesson I've already been through. But the first thing that popped into my head, and I read all of this yesterday, and I read it again this morning to prepare for today. And obviously I didn't memorize it because I'm reading it to you. But the first thing that popped in my head was chronic pain. I know a lot of people with chronic pain, whether it's fibromyalgia or what sibling has, CRPS1, which is RSD, reflex sympathetic dystrophy. We just found out that CRPS, chronic regional pain syndrome, has two different types. There's one, which is basically RSD, and then two, which is it's a different form of it, but older sibling has full body RSD. And, there are times when she can't do things. So, and I haven't always been patient with that, because there are times when she will push herself to go and see other people, but I get it. I get it now, because these are not people she gets to see all the time. And she is my roommate, so, she sees me every day. So she probably figures, well, I hang out with you all day long. Why do I want to hang out with you outside of the house? So a lot of times they end up doing things alone. And that's okay, because I've learned how to do that. But the one thing I've noticed is that a lot of these people who suffer through chronic pain, their friends are not as supportive as I think they thought they would be. I think the good ones are. The good ones that stay around and say, hey, I get it. I see you're hurting. If you can't do something, you can't do something. But then there are the other people where they'll say, like, well, I've lost so many friends because of this. Because the friends don't understand. The friends don't understand how one day you could be this, let's go, 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 go person. And then the next day, maybe you've been in an accident, maybe there's been trauma to your body, and chronic pain comes, or chronic fatigue, or any other type of autoimmune disease that has flare-ups, where you can't just be as spontaneous as you wanted to be. There could be somebody says, 3 days earlier, hey, so-and-so want to go to the blah, blah, blah this weekend. Sure, that sounds great. And then, maybe something happens, and the day before they have a flare-up. Now, if it's anything like what Sibling has, again, like I said, CRPS1, which is RSD, and their flare-ups, they vary. But the worst of their flare-ups literally feels like they are burning from the inside out. And by that I mean they cannot even be touched. Even wearing clothes hurts them. Anything that touches their skin, because their skin is so sensitive. It's like literally like having whatever degree burns, right? Except it's from the inside and it's a flare. And eventually it goes away. But it also makes it hard for them to move. It makes them hard for them to function. And so they may say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry I can't go. It's like, oh, great. Well, we had this planned and now you're telling me. But they don't schedule their flare-ups, okay? I mean, they could stub their toe and it could cause a flare-up. And so I'm learning this as we're going. I mean, I know all this stuff, but in my head it's finally clicking that it's not an affront to us. It's not being offensive to us, and it hurts them. It hurts them to say no. It hurts them to not be able to go out and function like everybody else, especially when they've been an active person the majority of their life. And then all of a sudden they have to say no, 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 because they're not up to it. So if you know somebody like this, just ask them, hey, what can I do to help you through this? Maybe you're not going to this place or whatever, but get together and do something else if they want to, or maybe just talk with them on the phone, because sometimes having somebody talk to you, it reminds you that you're seen. So if you're the kind of person that will walk away from a relationship or a friendship just because this person isn't the same person you knew 5 years ago, you really have to evaluate where you stood in this relationship. Now, if you're a people pleaser and constantly giving in to somebody saying no, 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 and saying, well, that's okay, blah, 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 and watch the passive aggressive behavior, okay? I get caught in that sometimes. But when they talk about starting small, okay, this is for the people who are this is the deep, 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 deep people-pleasing people. Learn to say no. If somebody text messages you, learn to say no. If somebody calls you and you're not comfortable, learn to say no. If you're not up to it, learn to say no. Okay? And you don't have to be a chronic pain person to say no. You might be a person that's just, maybe you're having a mental flare-up. That's what I call my dinged up mental health. When my mental illness, when my depression has its own little spiral, I just call them flare-ups now, because that's kind of what they feel like. It's momentary, but it's enough to just kind of make you go, "Ooh, I need to take a second here." Because I don't know. And, 10 minutes later, it could be where it's like, you know what, I'm not doing all that great right now. I'm trying to keep myself balanced. Can we check in tomorrow to see if I'm up to this? And, ask them these things. Start small. It's okay to say no. Eventually you will work your way up to being able to look them in the eye and go, you know what, I just can't. I can't today. Sorry. So set goals and priorities. Consider where you want to spend your time. Who do you want to help? What goals are you trying to accomplish? Knowing your priorities can help you determine whether or not you have the time and energy to devote to something. If something is sapping your energy or taking too much of your time, take steps to address the problem. As you practice setting these boundaries and saying no to things you don't really want to do, you'll find that you have more time to devote to things that are really important to you. If you have, okay, so they're going to talk about this a little bit later, about, the relationship give and take. But I'm going to jump a little ahead and just bring that in for a second. If you hang out with someone that constantly calls all the shots, wants to do all the things, you are a people pleaser. Especially if they don't ask you what you want to do. They just decide that's what you're going to do. Then you are probably a people pleaser. Now, I'm not here to diagnose anybody. I just know who I am and where I've been, and that I am a recovering people pleaser. And because of that, I have had to learn how to say no. And sometimes it was that one person I talked about earlier. I mean, I don't use names, but I do use examples. And sometimes, they may recognize themselves. I do know this person is not on social media. And, I wanted to express that because that was the best example I could give to show people that, hey, I've been there. I've done that. But I've also been that person, that hurt person hurting people. So having, had someone help me through that, help me to see it in somebody else. And when I was able to see it in somebody else, I realized then those are the boundaries I need to set, and that's where I really need to communicate honestly and, make them understand where I'm coming from. That yes, I love having our friendship, but I'm not always going to be capable of doing everything you want me to do. Or I'm not going to be willing at times. Maybe I just don't want to do it. Maybe I wanted to rest. Maybe, you might have had the week from hell, right? And all you can think of is Friday night or Saturday night. I am just going to chill. Maybe it's Friday night because you might have plans on the weekend. But Friday night, there's nothing. You've cleared your calendar. You're going to take all this self-care, right? I talked about it the other day. Every day, Netflix and chill has come up in this. And it could be anything, whatever it is that you fancy, maybe you're going to make dinner for yourself. Maybe you're going to take yourself out. Maybe just lots of self-care happening. And somebody calls up and says, well, I could really use you right now. And it may be something superficial. You have to discern, because sometimes people do need us. Sometimes we're that one person they call that they know they can trust, and they know that can be there for them. And you can give them an option. Say, hey, you know what? Today's my self-care night. You're welcome to come along, or you're welcome to join me. But we're not going to talk about anything bad. We're nothing negative. It's just going to be a fun night where we have a good time, or just a fun night where, we just sit there and chill, maybe have a couple of drinks, or, have popcorn, watch a fun movie, and then we'll talk about it later. But, you can set those boundaries. Or if there's somebody that's constantly trying, there's might be people poking from this direction, that direction, that direction. Hey, so-and-so, want to go out tonight? It'll be a lot of fun. I've been having problems with so-and-so. I could really use an ear. Just say, you know what? It's been a long week. It's been a hard week. It's going to be hard to say no. But sometimes we have to. We're not trying to be mean. Self-care is not selfish. Self-care is necessary. And when you don't get enough, you start having that depleted willpower. You start getting that anger and frustration. You start having that anxiety and stress because you're not taking care of yourself. You are so busy trying to save the world that you're forgetting that you also exist in this world. So set your goals and priorities, just say, hey, you know what? I had this planned for tonight. Like I said, you can tell them you're welcome to join me or not. You can just do it by yourself. Just say, no, do you mind if we do this? Maybe tomorrow, because maybe you don't have anything going on tomorrow, but you need some personal time. All right. Especially if these people are energy zappers, you have to learn how to be honest with people like that. And I know it's hard. It's hard. Being a recovering people pleaser is not easy. It's not easy because we do want to save the world. We do want to help everybody. And also, this is the other thing I was thinking about last night when I was laying in bed, thinking about the tips, for today. A lot of times we have to wonder if our people pleasing is coming from a place of our inability to heal ourselves. Are we trying to please somebody else and help somebody else through their issues because we can't, heal our own? Remember, you cannot fix anybody. The only person that can fix anybody is themselves. You can help guide them. You can carry their light for them until they're able to carry it again. You can hold space for them. These are all terms that we use in mental health. These are all terms we use in, being supportive of other people. But if they're struggling to hold their own light, you can hold it for them, but you cannot fix it. You can't move ahead of them until they're ready to move with you. And only they can do that. Only they can decide where their healing is at and if there's going to be any at all. All right. So here's a good one. Try positive self-talk. If you start to feel overwhelmed or tempted to cave, build up your resolve with positive self-talk. Remind yourself that you too deserve to have time for yourself. Your goals are important and you shouldn't feel obligated to give away your time and energy on things that don't bring you joy. Okay, so set goals and priorities. Stall for time. I like this one. Stall for time. When someone asks for a favor, tell them you need some time to think about it. Think about it. Saying yes right away can leave you feeling obligated and overcommitted, but taking your time to respond to a request can give you the time to evaluate it and decide if it's something you really want to do before you make a decision. Ask yourself, how much time will this take? Is this something I really want to do? Do I have time to do it? And how stressed am I going to be if I say yes? The one thing that keeps coming up in my mind, right, is when people ask you to help them move. Now, they talked about yesterday, sometimes you'll do things like to return a favor or to earn a favor. But does anybody out there have those friends that constantly ask you to help them do something, and the minute you ask them, crickets, nothing, can't find them to save your life, and then all of a sudden they resurface when they need something else? These are where the boundaries come from. This is where the stalling for time comes from. This is where setting your goals and priorities and starting small comes from. Those are people who, again, we're going to talk about this in a bit, the relationship give and take. Okay? So, research has also found that even a short pause before making a choice increases decision-making accuracy. By giving yourself a moment, you'll be better able to accurately decide if it is something you have the desire and time to take on. So, back before annual passes were a pain in the ass at Disneyland, I had one, and there were times when people would be so surprised because, hey, I'm going to go run to Disneyland today. Do you want to go and meet me after work? And there were times when it's like, believe it or not, everybody knows me. I could live there. I love that place. I know, but it really is my happy place, or was. But there were times when I'd say no, because there's so much to it. It's not just, parking and going in. Not like the old days. I remember the old days when you could park outside of Disneyland and just walk in. Okay, that was a long, long time ago in my youth, but I do remember those days. But now it's like, you got to find the parking lot. You got to get to the parking lot. You got to find a spot in this parking lot. Then you got to walk a gazillion miles just to get to the tram. Then you got to take the tram to get to the park, in which case you got to walk even more. And then you get into the park, and then you got to find your people. And usually there's a designated spot to meet them, so you're fine. But it's not like you're just walking into a restaurant, sitting down and going, oh, there you are, where it takes 5 minutes, right? You are literally considering the fact that from the time you get into the vicinity of this place to the time you meet up with them could be anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to an hour. Maybe, depending on how busy everything is. So, there are times when I would just say no, because I started to take that into consideration. Not because I'm lazy, but because I had long weeks sometimes. Sometimes I just pushed myself and burned the candles at both ends. I just needed to rest. But they understood, because Shelly's saying no to Disneyland, which basically Shelly's saying to them, yeah, I got nothing in the tank. I've got absolutely nothing in the tank. But that's me. What if it was somebody else? What if somebody else was saying, oh yeah, I don't have the energy. Well, you never have the energy, and they might try to pepper you with all these negative things. Don't let them. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're feeling this way or that or the other. Let them talk themselves into the ground. Okay. Just don't react, and don't feel guilty to the point where you feel like, fine, okay, I'll do this. I'll go. you have to learn how to say no. And stalling for time could be like, oh yeah, hey, do you want to go here tonight? And you start thinking about everything it's going to take to get there. Just say, you know what? Let me think about it for a little bit. And if they come back being kind of belligerent, just say, well, you know what? I think I'm going to stay home tonight, because you also don't want to deal with that. All right. I can't tell you what to do in your friendships, but you need to evaluate them if you feel like you were getting the short end of the stick. Assess the request. Another step toward overcoming people pleasing is to look for signs that other people are trying to take advantage of your generosity. We just talked about this. Are there people who always seem to want something from you but are suddenly unavailable if you need them to return the favor? Or do some people seem to be aware of your generous nature and ask because they know that you won't say no? That has been every people pleaser I've ever met, including myself, and the one I am a roommate of. In fact, we had a recent incident where this became an issue, and but I don't think it's always manipulation. It does say here, if it feels like you're being manipulated into doing things, take some time to assess the situation and decide how you would want to handle the request. For repeat offenders or people who keep insisting that you should help, be firm and clear. Okay? Sometimes we're going to have to be firm and clear for other people, which we should not have to do. People should be able to set their own boundaries without having somebody else do it for them. But that sometimes comes from a place of not healing inside, not having certain things in your life healed. So sometimes we got to cut people a break. But if there are people out there, there are people who just assume that you were going to be there, that you were going to do something. And, yesterday I had a miscommunication with a friend because of a behavior that I needed to heal from somebody else. A different friend that would just say, hey, you know what? I need you to go with me to my blah, 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 because I need the carpool lane. And not asking me, not saying, would you mind? It was like, well, I need you to do this. And it's like, at that point, I was like, I'm so glad I started setting boundaries. It's like, no. It's like, first of all, are you going to ask me or are you telling me? And sometimes you have to be firm. I mean, it says be firm and clear. And I was firm and clear. And this is how I reshaped a friendship from being toxic and a one-way street to being fairly level and, more give and take. And, I don't do things tit for tat. I don't do things so someone else would do something for me. But relationships are a give and take, regardless of whether you're doing something tit for tat for someone. I have people, I know, I can feel older sibling thinking right now, because I do have a friend that constantly asks for a ride to the airport. But the thing is, I finally said, you know what? I'm always doing this, but they're all like, well, all you have to do is ask me and I'll take you. And it's like, oh, I didn't think they would, because they never asked. So you have to also assess if it is a give and take, is it a give and take because you're letting them take and you're not asking for anything? There is that too. So you have to use your spidey instincts. You have to use your brain to see if, where it is. It's like if you ask them and they say no, just be like, then you start thinking. But if you've never asked them, for a favor, then it's hard to assess where you really kind of stand in that relationship. So you also might want to think about that. But you have to be careful for people that do take advantage of you, that do manipulate you, that are always asking of your time and not giving anything in return. Like if you need to talk to someone, maybe you had a bad day or a bad week, and this is a person that's constantly, ringing your phone and, ringing it off the hook, which is the old days. Can't ring a cell phone off the hook. But, and just not being there when you need the ear. So assess the request, all right? Avoid making excuses. It's important to be direct when you say no and avoid blaming other obligations or making excuses for your inability to participate. I'm so bad at that. If I don't want to do something and they start making me feel bad about it, I will literally make something up. And I don't do that anymore. Now I'm just honest. It's like, yeah, I really don't want to do that. or no, or I'm busy that day. And a lot of times now, at least I am busy, but there have been times in the past where I have said, oh, no, sorry, I have, I'm helping someone that day, or I have plans with so-and-so that day, or I got to bring, I'll lie and say I got to bring older sibling to an appointment. And I have done this in the past, and I have felt bad about it, but these were the people that were constantly, taking advantage of my time, just because I have a little more time than most people do. They just think that automatically I'm going to be there. And it's like, oh, no. And so, I've learned how to be a little more clear on things. I've learned how to be a little more, give and take. So, and we have to watch that too, because there are times when people just, they sometimes I feel forgotten by some of my friends. And I'm just saying that because there have been a lot of things I haven't been able to do in the last couple of years for an odd amount of reasons. And I think a lot of them have just given up on me, or I'm just not as fun to hang out with, or they'd rather be around people that are. And, you kind of feel like you're taking advantage of when they get bored and have nothing to do. And then suddenly it's like, oh, hey, you want to go hang out? So be careful with that too. Especially when it comes to people pleasing. And don't make excuses. Be honest. If they are good friends, the people that love you will stay in your life. You may have tense moments. Again, you're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. But if they're the people that truly care about you and love you and are just, part of your life, it'll be okay. This is how we weed out the bad people. This is how we weed out the ones who, may have a lot going on and don't know how to do the give and take. And we have to feel like we make excuses. We need to make excuses for them. So, the next one. Remember that relationships require give and take. A strong, healthy relationship involves a certain degree of reciprocity. If one person is always giving and the other one is always taking, it often means that one person is foregoing things that they need to ensure that the other person has what they want. Are you the kind of person that will there's a difference between going with the flow and going with the flow to avoid tension? Are you going with the flow because it's something that you're just like, yeah, I'm up for a new adventure. Maybe I'll enjoy this. Maybe I won't. Or are you just going with the flow because you're being told to go with the flow? Because you're being told that this is what we do. This is what we should, be doing. And I don't want to do what you want to do because it sounds stupid. It sounds dumb. We were watching a episode of Big Bang Theory a couple days ago. And the friendship between two of the girls was like, she's like, well, you always decide what we're going to do. So I just figure, hey, I don't want to not hang out with you. So I'm just going to do what you want to do. And then, the person started thinking about this, and it was really kind of stuck in their wheelhouse, or, not their wheelhouse, spinning around the wheels in there. And then they talked to him and said, you know what, is this something I do? And then, so the person said, hey, let's go do this tonight. They look like, oh my God, what did I just get myself into? But turns out they ended up having fun doing it. Not something they want to do every weekend, but they ended up enjoying it. So a lot of times you might say no, because it's like, well, you always make the decisions. You always do this. You always do that. And it's okay to say no. Make the suggestion. Say, why do we always have to do this? Can we go do this? I try to be, in recovery mode, I try to be more cognizant of other people's needs. I admit there are times when, I'm off, visiting places or whatever, where I have very limited choices. I'm just kind of, I don't want to say forced to go with the flow, but I just choose to go with the flow because I know that anything I ask to do will basically not be heeded for the most part. It will just kind of right over somebody's head. And so it's kind of like, yeah, all right, I'll just tag along. And that's my choice. I choose to tag along. I could stay home. But I figure, I'm one of these people that kind of shies away from anything unknown. So I do try to be a little more adventurous now. And so I decide that those are going to be my adventurous moments. But relationships do require give and take. So if this is something that you're going through with somebody, you might want to think about it. I had an ex-boyfriend that did this to me. He was considerably older, about 11 years, and I was still young, early 20s. And even for my birthdays, like, we were together for 3 years, and every birthday that he spent with me, it was always something he wanted to do. And when I tried to surprise him one time and plan something at, this fancy restaurant that had just opened up, well, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, but you're always deciding where I go on my birthday. And I tried to speak up, and he's like, well, that's because, I'm the one paying. Well, I was the one paying for his birthday. But that was his excuse, because it was something he wanted to try. It was something he wanted to do. I remember one of my early 20s birthdays. I did something, I went somewhere and did stuff that I absolutely did not want to do. Went to a place I did not want to go to, and I love my birthdays. Our birthdays are our personal holidays, or the day that we get to celebrate, being on this planet. And I had no say in my birthday. I had absolutely zero say. And I didn't want to make him mad. I didn't want to upset him. I didn't want to fight on my birthday, so I just went along with it and decided that I was going to be okay with it. And I wasn't. That night I drove home and I went back, because he lived in he lived one county up. Actually, he lives in the county I live in now. But, and I went home and I cried. My mom said, hey, how was your birthday? Because I was still living at home. This is before I moved up here. But, she's like, oh, how was your birthday? Did you have fun? I was like, yeah, it was great. It was great. And then I went to my room, closed my door, and just cried my eyeballs out. And that is not something I've thought about in a long time. So remember that relationships require a give and take. That doesn't mean that, well, I put away the dishes, so, if you have chores, you have chores. Okay? But when I say a give and take, I don't mean, oh, well, I went to this place for you, so you should have to go to this place for me. No. Give and take means, if it's not something you want to go to, ask them about it. Because you may just be saying no because you think they only have a certain type of food, right? Say it's a restaurant and you're thinking, oh, well, I don't like those kind of places. But you don't know if you don't like those kind of places because you've never been to one. Okay, this is something I have to deal with my own people. It's like, yeah, but I just tried it for the first time. It was really good. Are you sure you don't want to go? No, I don't want to go. But I sometimes surprise them because I go by myself. This is how I have learned how to do so many things by myself, because I get turned down by so many people to do things because it's not what they want to do. And so it's kind of like, okay, I'll just go by myself. It doesn't mean I walk away from the friendship. No, I just figured, hey, they don't want to do it and that's their loss. So I go and try it. That's something I learned from my mom. My mom's like, my mom would always say, don't knock it till you've tried it. So, and there are some places that people just can't go, maybe because they have, internal issues that require a little bit more delicate eating. So, but you never know. There's always something for someone somewhere. So, relationships give and take, all right? Help when you want to help. This is the very last one. Help when you want to help. You don't need to give up being kind and thoughtful. Those are desirable qualities that can contribute to strong, lasting relationships. The key is to examine your motivations and your intentions. Don't do things only because you fear rejection or want the approval of others. Keep doing good things, but on your own terms. Kindness doesn't demand attention or rewards. It simply requires a desire to make things better for another person. And again, that's where the altruism comes in. We always want to make things better for other people. And I think that's why sometimes people don't realize that the behavior that they have is of a people-pleasing nature. It's like, well, I don't want them to feel sad, or I don't want them to be upset, so I'm going to go help them. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. But when it comes at the expense of your own health, if you're pushing yourself to do something for somebody else simply because you're worried, that they're going to be mad at you, or they're going to resent you if you're not there for them in that exact moment, you gotta stop and assess the request. You have to sit there and, remember that a relationship is a give and take. Is this a person that is there for you when you're falling apart? Is this a person that is there for you when your world is caving in? I have people I can turn to. I have wonderful, wonderful friends. But I can count on in less than one hand how many people I know that I can probably call in the middle of the night that will answer if I'm in crisis. I mean, serious crisis. And yet, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just making this point because it is a people-pleasing behavior. And yet, I am the same person who has answered calls from people in the middle of the night. You know, I'm sick, can you take me to the ER? Sure. And then I have to go to work the next day. And not so much as a, thank you or an I appreciate it. And, I mean, I think that's polite. I'm not looking for it. I'm not asking for it. And, a lot of you might be sitting there saying, yeah, but you're talking about it. You're saying, where's my please? Where's my thank you? But you're the one who decided to do it. Yeah, I was the one that decided to do it. Because, this is a person that's in crisis. This is a person that's sick. But this is also a person that, when I've needed something has crickets. And so, there have been times when I have set my boundaries and I thought I have no energy to do this, because there were a couple of ER trips in a row and I did not answer the third call and they ended up driving themselves. And the whole point was, the next day I was like, oh man, I'm really sorry. I didn't hear your phone call, blah, blah. And I did. I made an excuse. I admit I didn't avoid the excuses. I made an excuse. Just says, yeah, it was a really bad night. So, I did not hear my phone last night. Unusually did not hear my phone last night. And they're all like, oh, that's okay. I just really didn't want to sit in the ER by myself. And that's okay. That's okay. These are choices I've made. And I have to own them, and I have to own them, period. But we're allowed to help when we want to help. And it shouldn't be to the point where we get fed up with something and then it causes a fight. This is why they're talking about the tips to stop people pleasing, so that you can nip these things in the bud early on in this growing, blossoming relationship. And again, when I say relationship, I mean in the broad sense, any type of relationship. We're not training someone to be a better person. If they're hurting, we're trying to help them. But the only way to help them is to not excuse the behavior. It's to gently point out the behavior. I have had the behaviors gently pointed out to me. And I'm telling you, I've had so much growth. I had growth that I never thought I would have in my life. And when I stop and think about it, it has been over the last couple of decades. Yeah, I'm that old. It has been over the last couple of decades because, not because I'm a slow learner, but because there was so much pushback on my part. And you have to decide. And a lot of that for other people was people pleasing. And then I'd turn around and be frustrated, angry, have anxiety out of the wazoo and stressing out in the wrong direction. Instead of focusing where that should have gone, it got all dumped onto somebody else that didn't deserve it. And I don't do that anymore. I do my best to be honest. I admit sometimes I still do the making excuses thing because some people just don't know how to take no for an answer. And, they don't give you any other choice. It feels that way anyway. Because I'm not always about confrontation now. I used to be like, yeah, let's, just to get all that anger and that darkness and that crap that was boiling up, right? It was like, yeah, let's go find someone to fight with. But now it's kind of like, yeah, I just don't want to deal with it. And so we pick our battles and we have to figure out how to pick them well enough. So, but people pleasing again and altruism, they do kind of walk a fine, blurry line. So just, if you feel like you're a people pleaser, if you feel like you're being taken advantage of all the time, if you feel like you're this person that is only there when someone needs to dump all their shit on you, assess the situation, journal it out if you have to, talk to them about it. What I really like at the end of this is that this is the final word from Very Well, which wrote this article. If being a people pleaser is making it difficult to pursue your own happiness, it is important to find ways to set boundaries and take back your time. Remind yourself that you can't please everyone. If people pleasing is interfering with your well-being, talk to a mental health professional. A trained therapist can work with you to help manage your behavior, prioritize your own needs, and establish healthy boundaries. I know a lot of it comes from us just wanting to be liked, wanting to be seen, wanting to fit in. And you have to decide if your mental well-being is worth that. And that's why I loved this article so much. That's why I really wanted to do this. It was only supposed to be on Monday, but there was so much coming out and so much being said, and it just worked perfectly that Monday, Tuesday, and then ending on Self-Care Wednesday, it just worked out that way. And so it ended up being a 3-part series. So if you haven't seen the rest of it, I would go back and watch part 1 and 2. And I do have a shorter TikTok version. So I know it's kind of late, right? Because you're at the end of this video. You're like, what the hell? There was a shorter version than this? Shelly Marie. But I've learned a lot through this too. I have. And I learned that I'm not so much a recovering people pleaser as I thought I was. Because I still make excuses. And I'm still making excuses even while we're talking, right? When I say, well, I just decided to go with the flow adventure. But for me, the way my mind works, in a way it is. But I have also noticed that I do speak up at times. Because it's like, when you go to visit somewhere, you don't want to just sit around all day. You want to do something. I mean, I can sit around in my own house, but you want to go out and just see something. And so a lot of times too, I'll just go. I'll just go spend the day with myself. I am an only child, so it's a little bit easier for me to just kind of slip into that mode. But just remember, I think the most important thing I really want to stress in this is that there is a give and take. Okay? I know there again, we're talking that fine line, right? We're talking that fine line that says, yeah, but you just said, and it's like, yeah, there is altruism, and then there's just that give and take. And when I say that give and take, what I'm talking about is if somebody is coming to you and constantly asking, and you ask one time and they say, oh, you know what, I can't today, and maybe they are genuinely busy, but if you keep asking and asking and asking, or you try to make the decision on what, the plans are this time, you decide for once that you're going to speak up and go, well, can we go do this instead? And they're like, no. It's like, and it might be your idea. Say, hey, I'm going to go and blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go? I had a friend once that I used to go to the movies with all the time. And I would say, hey, do you want to go see blah, blah movie? Well, no, I actually wanted to see this. And it's like, let's go see that instead. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was so upended by it because I didn't want to go to the movies by myself that I would just go along with them. And I'd either miss the other movie or I would go see it by myself, which I probably should have just done to begin with, because when I realized that I was tired of that happening, I said, hey, I'm going to go see this movie. Do you want to go? And if they say, no, I'd rather see this. Okay, well, I'm going to go buy my ticket for this movie and, enjoy your movie. And they're like, oh, well, don't you want to see it? It's like, no, I want to see this one first. Because I'm asking, when they asked me to go see a movie, I didn't say, hey, let's go see this instead. It was kind of like, oh yeah, okay. And it was a yes or no. No, I really don't want to see that. Okay. And so I learned how to set boundaries, but I don't know how to set boundaries with everybody. So I am learning that. And, I'm learning about the give and take in a relationship. So, and remember, if somebody's asking, but you're not asking back, don't think that that's automatic people pleasing behavior, because it may not be. You're just not asking them for a favor. You're just thinking, oh, well, they're asking me all these things, but they don't do anything for me. But did you ask them to do anything for you? If you didn't ask, you can't fault them for that. Now, if you're asking and constantly being turned down, that's when you have to reassess the situation and reassess where you stand in this friendship and maybe have a long talk with said person. Okay, because, like I said, if they are truly, truly your friends, a lot of times they don't realize their behavior. A lot of people are so, I hate to say this because I'm this way too, but we're like this all the time. We're in our phones all the time. We're not paying attention to the world outside. And because we're not paying attention to the world outside, time goes like this. The first thing we do when we wake up in the morning, we turn on the computer or we look at our phones or I don't even sleep next to my phone for that reason. I can't because otherwise I'd be up all night on my phone. I have no electronics on my bed or near my bed. they're about 10 feet from my bed, 5 to 10 feet from my bed, but they're not next to my bed. They're not on my bed, because that's a distraction. Plus all that energy and stuff coming out of it, that can't be good. But no, that's what we do. That's what we focus on. When we get bored, we turn on the TV, we watch TV all day, we look at our phones all day. Instead of getting outside, even if you're just going outside to just sit in the sun for 10 minutes or go for a short walk, we need to start looking up from the electronics. Because a lot of times, that too can, if we're not thinking and somebody says, hey, I'm going over here for blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go with me? Sure. And you might be like, oh crap, why did I just say yes? I'm tired. I wanted to go home. But now you've just committed yourself because you weren't paying attention. So there are a lot of things that we can talk about. In fact, I might make that a show. I might make that a show about how we spend too much time on our electronics. All right. That'll be forthcoming somewhere down the road. So let's just recap really quick and then I'll let you go. Tips to stop people pleasing. Establish boundaries. Start small. Set goals and priorities. Stall for time. Assess the request. Avoid making excuses. Remember that relationships require give and take, and help when you want to help. And if you need help with any of these people-pleasing issues or patterns, don't be ashamed to seek out professional help. Professional help, that's what it's there for. You don't have to have depression to seek out a mental health therapist. Okay? They are there to guide you when you're stuck. The obstacles. I know that we see it in movies all the time where people are constantly going every week. I go once a month. Literally, I go once a month. I'm checking in with my therapist. And just like I did before in 2017, I will probably what I call graduate from therapy. And by that I mean, it's just, I know where I'm at. I know the tools. And I figure it's time to start implementing them into my life and seeing how I do on my own, without having that little tugboat that's guiding me out to sea, right? It's time for me to set sail and see how far my ship goes. And every so often, I may come in for maintenance, because you got to take care of the wheels. You got to take care of the body from top to bottom. If you give so much time to taking care of your body, why not take care of your mind as well? All right. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. I'll see you back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live. All lives are public under the Aloha Perspective. You can jump on, you can chit chat, you can leave me comments, whatever you want to do. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much. And again, I'm going to put the link in the comments so you can read this article in full. Have a great day.